Hi, I'm Brandon Finnegan, Director of Elections here at Decision Desk HQ. This week, we're going to be talking about the May 24th primary elections that are coming up. Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, and of course the runoffs in Texas. Now before we dive in, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. If you enjoy these videos, be sure to click the little bell so you're notified as soon as they are released and give them a like. Let's go ahead and get on over to the elections, right? Now first up, of course, is Peach State, Georgia. Polls close at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The biggest race of the night is for GOP governor, but we also have a member-on-member congressional race to keep an eye on. Brian Kemp is looking to hold on to his seat as governor and is being challenged for that party nomination by former U.S. Senator David Perdue. Now, former President Trump has gone very hard after Kemp over the 2020 election results in the state and has decided to back former Senator Perdue. Kemp has led in polling and in fact has seen his lead kind of grow as the year has gone on. The biggest question of the night is if he can avoid a runoff at this point and win outright. Now, ABEV votes, your absentee and early voting, is the first to be dropped in most counties. Rural or suburban or urban, that's the kind of first tranche of votes you're going to get throughout the night. And the counties to watch for to see if Kemp's going to be able to get over that 50%, it's going to be, where the voters are. So we're going to have to watch Cobb, we're going to have to watch Fulton County, we're going to watch even DeKalb County, Gwinnett, some of these more closer urban and suburban counties to Atlanta. These are areas that ironically had helped Perdue back in 2014 when he had ran successfully for the U.S. Senate and the general election. Besides the two more Democratic counties of Fulton and DeKalb, the rest of suburban Atlanta pretty much went his way. Now, we've seen Republican deterioration there in the general election, but it's still a pretty big source of votes for Republicans in primaries. There's also, of course, the very, very conservative North Georgia stretch. Pretty much all those counties that run from that ring around Atlanta all the way up and out, right, towards the northern end of the state. Now, if those territories break very, very heavily for David Perdue, then maybe, Kemp might be forced into a runoff at that point. But if northern Georgia, the very, very Republican northern Georgia area, kind of splits evenly between the two, or, Kemp's kind of able to hold his own there, then there's really no other place for Perdue to go. We don't expect Perdue in that instance to do better in Atlanta, which takes longer to report, or really that much better in southern Georgia, more rural Georgia, but where there's a smaller concentration of voters. So the focus for me is going to be on counties to the north and west of the suburbs, because those counties will be reporting a little bit earlier than the inner core suburbs. If they're breaking pretty well for Kemp going into the late show of the election day vote that comes in, and of course the election day vote that'll come in for Metro Atlanta, he may be a favorite to actually avoid a runoff altogether. But if Perdue is doing really well in northern Georgia and he's able to kind of nip at Kemp's heels, and as you get closer and closer into Atlanta, we're going to be seeing a runoff election. And if there is a runoff, that'll be happening on June 21st. Now, on the Democratic side of governor, Stacey Abrams is expected to easily win that primary, setting up simply a potential rematch for the 2018 election. Going to that member-on-member race I mentioned earlier, Georgia's 7th House District. Georgia still has 14 seats after reapportionment, but the district boundaries have changed significantly. As suburban Atlanta districts have drifted towards the Democratic Party, the state legislature redrew some of these districts to shore up some Republican lawmakers. That means that two Democrats, Carolyn Bourdeaux and Lucy McBath, they're going to be facing off against each other in the new 7th district, which includes most of what's now Bourdeaux's district in and around Gwinnett County. Now, the race is interesting because if you know the whole history here, Lucy McBath, of course, won the Georgia 6th district. Georgia 6 was considered a very competitive open seat way back in the ancient times of 2017. And that district has become even more Democratic, or what was the old 6th district, which was the northern tier of Fulton County and a chunk of Cobb and DeKalb counties. That just has become more and more Democratic. It was kind of broken up and made far more Republican, leaning out into the outerland suburban areas, which shored up it as a Republican sink basically in the suburbs. And that kind of forced McBath to reevaluate where she was going to run. So she's chosen to challenge Carolyn Bourdeaux to try to keep her seat in Metro Atlanta. So what we were going to be watching for are just the core counties as they report. We're going to see what the differences are between the early vote that drops in first and then the subsequent election day vote. Do we see any shift towards Bordeaux or towards Macbeth in that voting pattern before we can really make a determination of who's going to come out on top? The other big contest, I would say, for May 24th, beyond Georgia, it comes a little bit later. Alabama's polls will close about an hour after Georgia's, 8 o'clock on the eastern seaboard, but 7 p.m. for those locals down in Alabama. And the big contest there is the Republican senatorial race. There are 3 main contenders that are vying to replace retiring Republican Senator Richard Shelby. First up is Congressman Mo Brooks, who represents a northern Alabama district that's centered around Huntsville. Mo Brooks is no stranger to running in U.S. Senate elections. He had tried to run in the primary back in 2017 when the Jeff Sessions' old seat was up in that special election. And Mo Brooks had been initially endorsed by former President Donald Trump, but then he kind of pulled the endorsement as Brooks started to kind of do poorly and flounder a little bit in the polls. And Katie Britt, who was Senator Shelby's chief of staff. There's a third candidate, like we said, businessman and former Army pilot Michael Durant. Now, Michael Durant, there's been a few questions about his residency ties to the state, but he's still kind of in this between Britt and Mr. Brooks. So, because of a runoff system in Alabama, if nobody gets 50% of the vote, which is very likely and happens frequently in Alabama races, there will be a runoff election the same night that there's the runoff election in Georgia. So, why don't we kind of talk about the geography of the state? If Brooks is going to make it to the runoff, where we'd expect him to succeed, of course, is in his home district in the north. So you're going to want to see him leading in counties like Madison and Limestone counties. Right? If he's got a good grip on those voters, he's got a fighting chance to make it into the runoff at that point. The other area that Mr. Brooks is going to be wanting to really shore up, if he's going to have any kind of fighting chance of getting into a runoff election, is going to be southeast Alabama. Now, southeastern Alabama hasn't always broken for the eventual winner of a primary, but it has enough voters in there to shore up social conservative options. It's been kind of a base for Roy Moore when Roy Moore would make his statewide race trials in primaries or in general elections. So you're talking about counties like Coffee, Pike, and especially Houston. The helpfulness about these 3 counties is that those 3 counties report quickly on election night. I believe that the reporters we've had in some of those counties have been kind of blindsided by how fast the returns can come in sometimes, and it's a good thing. It gives us a really good idea of how things are shaping up in that whole chunk of the state. So, now, of course, if Shelby's former chief of staff, Katie Britt, if she's doing really well in Southeast, all right, that's going to give her a good chance of not only making it to her runoff, but maybe even edging out everybody if she can consolidate enough. Now, where she'd want to consolidate also is that other big chunk of Republican voters, which is around Birmingham. Shelby County, St. Clair County, Jefferson County, all towards the north, south of Brooks's district, but about a third of the way down through the state. If she's shoring it up there, she's winning the suburbs down there, then she's going to have a really good shot of making it easily to the runoff. And then the other territory, the wild card we'd want to see is, of course, Mobile. So the counties of Mobile and Baldwin in southwestern Alabama, we want to see how they break too. If any one candidate dominates at least 2 of those regions, Metro, Birmingham, Mobile, Southeast, or Huntsville, Northern Tier, if anyone can get 2 of those pieces, they're almost certainly going to advance to the runoff election. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it with Alabama after we've done a couple of races over there. Now, I'd also say that the winner of this race, whenever it's settled, is the prohibitive favorite in November. Yes, we all know what happened in 2017. All right, but this is not 2017. It's not an open special election. It's a traditional midterm election. And it's a midterm where we've seen the generic ballot go as it's been going in a state that has been considerably Republican for some time. So we would have to say whoever makes it out of this primary fight is going to be the overwhelming favorite in the November election. Now, moving on a little bit over to Arkansas, we'll touch base just a little bit here. There's really nothing expected to be particularly close in November in Arkansas or really in the major primaries. Sarah Huckabee Sanders Former President Trump's spokeswoman and the daughter of former Governor Mike Huckabee is running to fill the office that he once had filled. So she's expected to win the primary and the general election for governor. Moving on to Texas, the runoffs, all right? So we're back in the Lone Star State. We were there, of course, back on March the 1st for the initial round of the primaries. To me, there's two really big races to watch here, but there are a lot of other contests too. And those of you who are local Texans are going to want to grill me for not, what about this race? What about that race? You've got a lot of races. It's a very big state. But let's focus on two, all right? Two big races. Attorney General race on the Republican side between incumbent Ken Paxton and George P. Bush. Now, back in March, Paxton cleared 43% of the vote, nearly double to Bush's, but he was forced into a runoff. And as you can see from this map, Paxton won across the state, with Bush just kind of getting a smattering of smaller counties, the largest of which is Hidalgo County down in the Rio Grande Valley, with about 15,000 votes. Now, even there, he won it by fewer than 500. Congressman Louis Gohmert won the remaining counties in his East Texas district. On the Democratic side of major exciting races to watch for the night is the House District 28. That's where incumbent Congressman Henry Cuellar is considered a conservative by some or moderate within his party, and he's been the target of some more progressive elements for quite some time. He fell just less than about a point and a half from avoiding a runoff against challenger Jessica Cisneros. And she was only about 2% behind him in that first round. A third candidate received just around 5% of the total vote. Now, there's two different angles here regarding this district, all right? From the challenger's view, Jessica Cisneros and her more progressive supporters, Cuellar is kind of an oddity because he is comparatively very conservative in the U.S. House, which kind of puts him as an oddball, not only nationwide, but even in the Texas delegation of Democrats. And their argument will be that they need to galvanize their base as much as possible for November, especially if this is going to be the kind of general environment that we're looking at in the generic ballot. Every voter they can get excited about to turn out and vote and pull Democratic, well, that's going to give us a better chance of keeping the seat. Now, the congressman's point of view is probably more along the lines that as a more, quote, moderate or conservative member here in an area that frankly has been shifting a bit, the Rio Grande Valley shifted towards the Republican Party, notably in the last couple of years. We've seen that. We saw that in the presidential election in 2020. So maybe their angle is by keeping this more of a moderate or conservative track, we can fight to keep this seat still in Democratic hands. There's good weight to either argument. And really what it's going to come down to with the runoff election is who's able to turn out their voters more. We saw it was extremely close the last time, so we're going to be waiting on those votes from all these counties, especially Starr County, which kind of took its time during the first round. That one turned out to be very pivotal for the incumbent congressman. It was a pretty big one for him, and it kind of balanced out everything that we were seeing for Cisneros. So, two very exciting races to watch in Texas on Tuesday, the 24th. Now, that's going to do it for my preview of May 24th's primaries. We're going to be taking a break next week because of the Memorial Day holiday, but we'll be back soon with a look at the contest coming out in that second half of this big 2-month sprint of primaries. All right, June 7th features contests in California with their unusual top 2 system, races in Iowa, Mississippi, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. It is indeed a Super Tuesday. As a bonus, we'll have the Los Angeles mayoral primary and the San Francisco DA recall election that we'll be watching. There's always something happening in the world of elections, and we cover it all here at Decision Desk HQ. In the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, and sign up for new video notifications. But until then, I'm Brandon Finnegan. Thank you for watching.